Well, it turns out that we have been named in the top places to work in Australia in a category, I guess I have to be very specific, in the category in which the businesses have more than 100 staff. So as much as we want to brag about that, what we thought we might do instead this week on Business Focus is talk about why we got that accolade and maybe talk about it in a way where hopefully you, the viewer, can maybe look to take some of what we've done and apply it in your own business if you think that's relevant. So obviously, I'm Brendan Ritchie, the Chief Growth Officer at First Focus, and today to talk all about exactly how we got this accolade, how we placed, and what we do to drive employee experience and happiness within the business. I'm joined by Neil Smith, our Head of People. Sorry, you're our Chief People Officer, aren't you? That's the right title.
I am, indeed.
Nice. Good. Look at me go. I know things eventually, sort of, kind of. I get there. Anyway, okay, cool. Look, thank you for joining me. We're doing this remotely because we have to. You're in WA. And obviously, I'm in the Brisbane office. Neil, what's a good place to start? Let's actually talk about what this award, is it an award or is it a ranking? Is it a list? Let's talk about what it is anyway and how it was determined, who runs it, and why it matters.
Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all, Brendan. And, nice to chat about this, one of my favorite subjects. So the award that we've won is a benchmarking survey. It's run by a company called WRK+. They do this every year. And
how long has it been going for?
Several years. I don't know exactly how many years.
Okay.
So probably edit that out, I would suggest.
Strong start. No, I'm not going to edit it out. I'll just put you on the spot and leave you floundering. It's great. All right, no, cool. So WKR, they run that. Please, carry on.
So it is, as you mentioned correctly, previously there is categories. So there's 4 different categories. We in the 100 to 1,000 employee bracket, if you like, and it is an Australian-only survey. So we have employees in other countries as well. This is limited to Australia. Okay. So the way it works is, as I mentioned, it's a benchmarking survey. It's industry-wide, so it's not just in our managed services industry. It's across all industries, and it's essentially comprised of 2 components. So the first one is an employee survey, which counts for 60% of your score. And that's broken down into the way employees engage with the business, how they engage with their work, and how they engage with the teams within the business. And then the second part that counts 40% is based on a submission that we do ourselves, which is very broad. So it covers everything from how we find and onboard people to issues like gender equality and diversity to strategy and how we communicate our strategy and get people aligned with it. So it's very broad.
Okay, right. And I guess the things that we believe were key to us getting this getting ranked on this list of best places to work in Australia. We've got a fair idea as to the things that make us a great place to work at.
Yeah.
So I think today the plan is to go through them in a way again where we'll talk to them with some specificity, difficult word to say, so that hopefully the people watching, our clients and just other viewers are able to actually take them away back into their own business and apply them. So let's maybe start off with recruitment, right? Because you can't create a great employee experience without getting the right people on board to start with. So what makes how we recruit great talent special?
Look, the first thing I would say is that we do most of the things that everyone else would do, but there are a couple of things that we do differently. And the most significant one for me is that we actually put our customer at the heart of our recruitment process. What I mean by that is we actually know what our customers want from our employees because we've asked them. And we've taken that feedback and then we've brought it into our recruitment process. And like, for example, our customers have told us they want people that are responsive and they want good communicators. So when we are looking for people, we focus very much on communication, and it's not just about being succinct or talking eloquently or clearly. It's actually the volume of the communication and the tendency to initiate communication that's more important for us.
Early and often, right?
100%. And we know that IT guys are not exactly renowned for picking up the phone. So that can be quite a challenge in our process. So making sure that we understand what our customers want and then find people that are actually going to align with that is a big part of our process. The
Right.
other thing that we do differently is we recruit based on values, and we prioritize values in our recruitment process. It's not just, okay, they're sort of a fit, that's okay. We deliberately prioritize values to the point where if someone's not values aligned, we won't actually hire them, and that comes with a cost. So we end up missing out on a bunch of really talented people that would otherwise have been great employees, but we've made that decision that we want people that are aligned with our values, and so we stick to it diligently.
Right. And I think something that, what a great employee will know what another great potential employer looks like, right? And that's a great way of making sure that we're presented people who have a great value set, an aligned set of values. So the referral policy that we have is something we should probably touch on.
Absolutely, and I think it makes sense that people that have succeeded and are successful at First Focus would be able to identify, other similar people. So we do focus heavily on internal referrals. Almost all of the roles that we publish. So we have a dashboard where we publish all new roles. People are aware the minute a role is opened, so they can apply for it internally. But we also do actively look for referrals for all roles. Part of our strategy is to find great people and almost promote them ahead of when they're ready. We want people to be challenged and really give them the opportunity to step into a new role. So that's a big part of what we do, is looking for referrals.
And you sort of touched on it there, and it's definitely something that I've not seen it done as well in any other businesses I have here. And I think every business struggles with this, which is that capacity planning piece. It's making sure you've got the budget allocation, the backfill allocation, the planning and the awareness of where you're likely to have gaps, because nothing impacts employee happiness, which of course this is essentially all about, like being overworked and asked to do more than is humanly possible in a 40-hour work week. So do you want to just touch on how we've actually structured that and how that process works?
Yeah, good question. And it is something that we've put a lot of time and effort into doing well. So I mentioned previously we have dashboards, and we've got lots and lots of live data. And it's a real team effort to make sure that we do our capacity planning well. So firstly, at a company our size, we know there will be churn, and we have got pretty good data around historic churn rates, and we can fairly accurately predict if someone or how many people are going to leave over a certain period of time. We don't always know who it would be, but we've got some data on turnover. But probably more significantly, we've got data on growth, which requires a whole bunch of people across the business to be accurately updating opportunities so that data can all flow through, remain accurate, and give us really good visibility of what's coming down the pipeline and when new revenue's coming on. And what we actually do is we have this concept of hiring ahead of demand. So, from the perspective of people leaving, we want to have already hired their replacement before they even leave, before we know they're leaving, so that otherwise you end up with this big gap. Someone leaves, they have 4 weeks notice, you got to find someone. You could easily have a 2-month gap, and that, as you correctly said, really impacts happiness, especially in a shared environment like the service desk. So we carry 5 up to sometimes 8 or 9 additional roles for up to 3 months to avoid that exacting, and that requires an investment, obviously.
And you sort of said at the outset, we're customer focused in terms of our employment processes, because nothing makes for a bad customer experience like an unhappy employee. So the two are inextricably linked. There is just an absolute lock between the two things. Next, I want to talk about training and development, because again, if you feel like you are stuck in a rut, you are not going to be happy. And we want to be helping people grow regardless of what stage of their career they're in. I saw something you wrote for another bit of work we've got going on, and I thought it was really well laid out. Essentially, are you just starting? We've got this. If you're a fair way through your career, we've got that. Do you want to just touch on how we've structured, and structured's the right word, we've created very clear programs for each of, I guess, those sort of tiers of career levels?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I would say that this was a strategic decision we made a couple of years ago, that we really wanted to be the number one career developer for MSPs in Australia. And So we've invested very heavily in this space, and every decision like that comes with a cost. So we've kind of put our money behind it. And the very first thing we've done, I know you spoke about programs, but people actually need time to participate in programs. So
Yep,
the first thing
sure.
we did is we actually launched a training day across the whole business. Historically, executive team used to be part of peer groups, and they were all saying how much value we got out of it, having a day off to essentially learn from other people. And we then asked the question, well, if it's good for the executive team, why shouldn't it be good for everyone else? And that was the start of training day, and that's become a key thing. Where every single person gets a day off every month to do training, and that allows them the time to actually participate in the programs you were referring to. And I'll go through them very briefly. So
Please.
we have something called, I guess, for someone that's starting out or someone that wants to improve the skills in their current role, we have something called Bootcamp, which is manager led. Put a bunch of people together and focus on specific content, and that's helpful from an onboarding perspective. We then have something called Fast Track. So if you want to progress to the next level and you're prepared to put some effort into it, we have a Fast Track program that we run every quarter. You get a mentor that will allocate some time to catching up with you regularly. We give you some more challenging work or work that you would be doing in your next role or the next level. We also give you some budget to source some training material, and you kind of have to qualify for that. We don't just give it to everyone that asks for it, but that's a coordinated program. And if you succeed in Fast Track, we actually do something called immersion, which is for a month or two, you get to actually work in the next role. So if you want to be a project engineer and you're doing really well at the service desk, you'll join the project team huddles. You'll be part of their team, and we'll actually give you projects to do. And that's proven to be very successful in internal promotions and getting people to the next level. And then from a management perspective, we have some really exciting programs. So the new one that we've recently launched is called the Leadership Academy, and that's heavily focused on people managers. It's not only people managers, but that's a large part of the content. And the philosophy behind that is that, the old adage that people leave managers, not companies. So if that's true, we want to make sure that everyone has a great manager. And so we've built this program where we cover, the basic people management skills, and not just from a theoretical point of view. How do we do it the first focus way? So I see you've got the first focus method there on your desk. We use that as our library, and most of the content comes out of that. It's not just how do you, run a one-on-one, but how do you do it in a way, in the first focus way?
Yeah.
How do you run a weekly meeting? So there's some practical skills in there, but there's also skills like how do you, provide coaching, and how do you manage poor performance? All of those things. It's all wrapped up in this Leadership Academy. And then finally, for our people that have graduated from the academy, really want to get to the next level, call them future execs if you like, we have this concept of Leadership Lab, which is peer group focused with our CEO or someone really senior running those groups. And it's kind of replicating that external peer group model, with a bunch of external people come off site in trips to various events, with a lot of input from, as I say, senior people in the business to really develop those managers.
Yeah, right. I think two things I want to touch on there. One is when it comes to driving NPS to the point where all of your clients are promoters or advocates, whatever you want to call it. Well, let's call it promoters. NPS literally stands for Net Promoter Score. So I'm going to call them promoters. Anyway, point is, to get a consistently high Net Promoter Score, you need to be having a very standard and repeatable set of deliverables that are created and delivered at an excellent level. And the only way to do that is to have the kind of things you're talking about, those one-on-ones. It's just every part of the business to be, everyone within the business to be aligned on what that looks like when done well, and to be very clear on that, and to not have to go searching for that information. And the book, the method, and those structures around how to actually create leaders and get them all aligned on what great looks like is so key to just laying those fundamentals. The next one is that, we follow the scaling up framework. Getting the right people on the bus is sort of, just number one on the whole thing. To do that, that shows the importance of having the right people and keeping those people. And so when it comes to tracking metrics, and we've talked about the gauges already,
Yep.
even if we just look at the training day, for example, we track that religiously. Just what percentage of people in each team have had a training day in the month of whatever. And so it's not an optional thing. We believe it to be fundamental to the growth of individuals and to ensuring a good customer experience. So it goes to say that these things that I think some companies sometimes take a nice to have approach to this, we very much see it as an obligation and a fundamental to doing business exceptionally well. So those are my 2 points.
Yeah, and look, I'll jump in there as well.
Yeah.
You've touched on a couple of things there. The first one is just really clear on what's expected. People need to know, and if they don't, it's confusing and actually stressful. So we've created a lot of clarity in terms of performance measures. We've got values and behaviors that people are, that are available everywhere. There's posters on the walls. We reference them regularly, so people do need to know, and it's very clear how people are performing.
Yep.
So as a first point, but the other one is you mentioned data, and it's not just about having gauges up on the walls, but it's about providing people with the information they need to make really good decisions. And when we talk about data, it's all live, it's all real time. So, and you mentioned scaling up as well. We have meeting rhythms that start with daily huddles, and those sort of ripple through the teams. And it's all supports the system of having good information, making good decisions rapidly, which then allows us to be responsive to our customers.
Absolutely. All right, cool. I'm conscious of the fact we've got about 7 minutes left if we're going to stick to our very tight time schedule or our very tight schedule today. So let's talk about benefits. Everyone likes benefits. For me, I really like the salary sacrifice benefit that we have, or the option we offer all of our staff. For me, that's meant taking on a Tesla Model Y with a very, I guess, advantageous outcome in terms of the end cost to myself. There's things like, if you get a new mobile phone and you want to salary sacrifice that, it basically drops the price by anywhere from a third to a half, depending where you're at. So that's my favorite. What else would you want to cover in terms of, what you think makes for a smart choice for other businesses to look at?
Yeah, look, you've touched on financial, so let's start there. We do have the Tesla as a really great benefit. It also helps that the founder of the business is a racing car driver, so it's got a really nice wrap. It looks great, and a lot of people take that up. We have a company profit share scheme. Once you've been here for 2 years, we publish our financials. That's a very transparent culture. We publish that every month. We talk through the numbers, in our roundtables. But we also have this, the fork based on our forecast. Everyone can look up and see what they're going to earn at the end of the year, or quarterly actually, as a profit incentive, and that's available for everyone to see. But some of the non-financial benefits are equally compelling. So, for example, we have an inter-office travel program. We wanted to come up with something that was a little bit different, because we have such a geographically distributed workforce. Many people haven't met other people within their direct teams. So we came up with this idea that we would actually fund up to 5 days a year for people to work from any office they want, and they can spend that money on travel costs, accommodation, whatever it is that they want to do. And a lot of people do end up using that. So I think from that point of view, it is a really nice benefit.
It is. I mean, not everybody has a role where it makes sense for them to travel for work, right? So it's really plugging the gap and giving that opportunity to others.
Yeah, and from a social conscience perspective, we have lots of things with people can get involved in, from what we call a MAD Council, which is making a difference. Charitable organisations. We have volunteer days.
Over $100,000 raised now from our donations through that program. Yeah,
that's right. So people that want to get involved in that type of thing can do that. And we've actually gone through. We look at our competitors regularly to see what they're offering, and we make sure we cover off everything that our competitors offer. And probably the last thing I would say that where we are a little bit different is just from a work from home perspective. A lot of our competitors and just companies in general are going back to the office. There is, if you look at the data, the trend is very much moving back towards the sort of full-time or close to full-time working environment. We pretty clear that we want to make work, part-time or hybrid work successful. So we only require our employees to be in the office 2 days a week. We on those 2 days, we make sure everyone comes in, though. We call them anchor days. But outside of that, we have a lot of technology for people to connect, and we really do drive that quite diligently. But it's a great benefit, and it's something that we want to retain as part of our culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've recently invested in some pretty fancy office space. So I think Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney soon. Brisbane's already pretty nice. To say Melbourne? Melbourne's in the mix as well. So, yeah, there's some pretty fancy digs. So when people are coming in on those 2 days, it's certainly a nice space or spaces to come into. All right, I got two things I want to finish with. I want to talk about data specifically with reference to how do we stay engaged? How do we enable people to I guess themselves to proactively be engaged with the business, and then I'm going to come back to talking about essentially the return on investment when it comes to this focus on employee experience, employee happiness. So let's jump into data as relates to the employee experience.
Look, it's really simple. What we do is we ask people the same question every month: how happy are you at work? And we have, we're able to break that down on a team basis. It is an anonymous survey, so we don't know exactly who's saying what, but we get a pretty good feel in terms of what's happening across the business from a happiness perspective. And you'd mentioned capacity previously. If we understaff certain teams, we know immediately that feedback will come out every month in that survey, and we measure it every single month. We have a meeting with all the branch managers. So each office has a branch manager. We go through those results and we talk about what can we do, what's happened, what's changed in the last month. And it is, if it drops below a certain level, the whole company, the whole exec team will get behind it and make it our number one priority to turn it around. So sometimes we do make unpopular decisions, but we have the feedback mechanism to actually respond quickly if we do.
So I think the other part there, I'll reiterate, I know you touched on it, but data, the employee profit scheme, the accessibility and clarity around that, and our own financials, how are we tracking? How's the business going? The round tables that we have every quarter where it's just absolute sort of open book. Here's how we're tracking. Here's our priorities. Here's how we're tracking against those priorities. I think that just gives a sense of buy-in. It's not this black void of knowns until you get told something that relates to your role. So I think that's really, really unique about what we do.
And I also talked to the lack of hierarchy. Anyone can pick up the phone and call our CEO. We've tried to stay as flat as we can, especially as you grow, because people can lose touch. So we're trying to keep it as lean in terms of the number of layers as possible, but also just transparent. We like people to speak to each other directly and go straight to the top if you want a response. And our CEO does respond to those surveys every month. If someone has a specific comment, he'll come back and give a response directly.
And look, this morning I came up and I had breakfast with Scott, one of our project managers here in Brizzy. Right, it's the intent is to remove obstacles based on role as much as possible. Every time I come up from the Gold Coast to Brisbane, I sit down and I have a one-on-one with someone outside of my department, regardless of what role they have, because exactly what you said, we don't want there to be unnecessary barriers, whether perceived or real. Or we want to just all be aligned and working towards the same thing. So lots of ways that we make that happen. All right, let's finish off on the return. How do we understand how, what do we measure and what do we deem to be a good return on all of these efforts and investments?
Great question. And, training especially is notoriously difficult to measure in terms of the ROI. And the investment has been significant. I mean, if you think of a day a month, that's 5% of our capacity, or roughly 15 additional employees we could have hired if we didn't have training day. Yeah, so it's important to actually know what we're getting back from that.
Yeah.
And we do expect a lot from our people. We invest a lot, but we do expect a lot back. So anecdotally, where the return has come from is firstly in terms of reduced churn. That's a big one. We know that the cost of of someone leaving and having to rehire, retrain is significant. And especially over the last couple of years, we've seen a significant reduction in that sort of 1 to 3 year space, which is notoriously high in managed services for churn. So we've anecdotally seen some evidence. We can't necessarily say 100% that's because of training, because we've done a bunch of other stuff. But that's one area. The other one is from a productivity point of view. So we have published success measures. We track how people are going in terms of productivity, and we've seen consistent improvements over the the last 12 months. And what that does is it has a significant impact, first of all, on customer satisfaction, because it's taking less time to do things. As we become more productive, that flows on. And then that brings us to the next way that we can actually get a return on that investment is actually lower customer churn.
Yeah.
And we know that ultimately it's our customers that keep us in the job.
Yeah,
so that's a
right.
big focus.
I think in basic terms, or at least at a high level, customer satisfaction is the greatest predictor of long-term profitability, whether it's through what you've just touched on, which is lack of churn, or advocacy, referrals, as we know that referred leads have the highest conversion rate, typically the highest value, and the shortest sales life cycle. If you can be investing in your people to drive customer experience, the customer experience drives profitability. And we see ourselves consistently outperforming the market in terms of our growth and our bottom line profitability. And all of that comes back, at least to some degree, to these efforts. And I think the only real difficulty is to what is it fed by these efforts? And that's where there is some ambiguity. But you can certainly say without any doubt that if we weren't making these efforts, if we weren't enacting these initiatives, we would not have the same level of success. It gets a little murky as to exactly what the difference would be, but it's certainly there. So, look, I think, is there anything else you'd like to add, or is that a pretty good place to leave it in terms of, the drivers behind our top places to work 2024 listing, and how people could leverage it in their own businesses?
Yeah, so from the perspective of the award, it's really nice to get the external recognition and know that we stack up, especially because we were voted up there by our own employees. So that's meaningful for us, but the job's never done, and especially from a workplace perspective, we're certainly not about to get complacent anytime soon. And then finally, I would say, we can create as many programs and benefits as we like, but ultimately what makes a great workplace is the people that work in it. And we are so fortunate to have what we believe are the best people. So this award is for them.
Absolutely. All right, and you've got to take a big pat in the back as our Chief People Officer. This is obviously a lot of your work, a lot of your initiatives have gone into making this happen. So well played to you. Congrats. It's a big reflection on your work. And look, I think we'll leave it there. But the key thing about this, as much as it is a big brag fest, we have definitely been talking about how great we are, and to some degree, the listing says maybe we are doing some stuff right. But the key thing here is we're here to answer any questions if you've got them. If you would like to have a conversation around some of the initiatives in more depth, Neil or I would be very happy to talk about that, how we put them in place, how we track them, how operationally they're managed, the KPIs or the measures we put behind them. Very happy to have those chats. But as for today, we'll leave it there. If you've got any insights as well or any ideas for any future content, just let me know via LinkedIn. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.